right about inside the 4-yard line. They're giving them maybe about a half-yard gain. Coming on 1 minute left. Curran under center. One back behind him, that's Spur. He puts Ayala in motion. He hands off to Ayala, who cuts up the middle, gets low, touchdown, Calaveras!
And another flag.
And in shotgun, slot receivers. He's looking to throw. Gets some trouble, rolls off to his left. He throws, and it's intercepted! That's number 32, Caden Spur! Touchdown, Calaveras! Calaveras has the ball. They're moving from our left to right. Curran under center, single back behind him. Puts a man in motion. That's Ayala. He gives it to Ayala, who cuts up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. The 40. The 20. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Ethan Ayala. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Football with Coach Val. I'm your host, Gil Valtierra, the voice of Calaveras football. I'd like to welcome into the studio my guest, longtime coach and former athletic director at Calaveras High School, Coach Mike Koepp. Coach Koepp, thanks for being here. The crowd loves you.
Yeah, I can tell. That's the only time I ever hear them loving me, I guess, right? No, I thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I enjoy coming and talking Calaveras athletics in general and football a little bit too.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here. So with that, I mean, we've known each other for a very long time. Tell the folks out there, how long have you been coaching at Calaveras High? And fill us in on all the different sports, because I've seen you out there. I mean, man, you were out there selling hot dogs one time. You just do it all.
I've been there. Been there a long time. I want to say I think I even hired you as a coach.
I think you did.
Yes, yeah, I think so. Back in the day. Anyway, yeah, this is year 25 at Calaveras High School. For
wow.
Me. And I had 1 year previous to that at a K-8 school down in Long Beach. But yeah, I've been at Calaveras for 25 years. I've coached all 25 of those years. My very first year. Freshman volleyball and assistant on the varsity for baseball. But I've coached volleyball, baseball, softball. Now I'm coaching golf. I done a little bit of everything and
baseball.
Yep. I've done a little bit all of it. So
you coach football at the youth level, right?
Well, if we're talking about everything else, I coached youth soccer. I've coached youth football for several years. I've done a little bit all before I got here, and I coached track. I coached track in middle school. I coached basketball in middle school. I've coached basketball here through CYBA. I think I've touched quite a few athletes around here in Calaveras County.
It might have been easier to say, what haven't you coached?
Yeah, I've never coached a water sport. I've lifeguarded, and I've done some other things with water sports as far as, summer camps and stuff, but I don't think I've coached a water sport. I've never coached a high school basketball because I don't know that much about basketball. I know enough, but seeing the ins and outs of it, I don't think I'd love the opportunity sometime to coach maybe at the high school football level. I've never done that. That's always kind of been intriguing, and the guys that I hired as coaches, yes. Which there's many of those on our staff still that are hires by myself. And, so
that's one of the things that's always been nice at Calaveras. I've coached at a couple different high schools.
Yeah.
I did, I think 13, 14 years at Calaveras. Mm-hmm. And, the continuity is nice because you've got especially at the football level, you got some coaches that have been there a very long time.
Well, yeah, in my time of doing athletic director, we had 3 coaches, 3 head coaches, and now we're on to our 4th. But it was some interesting stories about hiring new coaches, especially in football. It's such a high level program, but it's a big one. High school football is a big one, and it really runs your school, runs your athletic program for the most part. And it's a big events, and the whole community really rides behind football quite a bit, not to take anything away from the other sports that are going on too. But it was an adventure when I had to go through the process of hiring our next head football coach the first time we had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Our original one, I inherited, I guess the best way to say, Roger Canepa, who used to be our football coach way back in the day. And Roger has moved on, and now he's at Central Catholic High School and doing great things there. And before us, he was at Sonora High School.
Sure.
But like I said, he was somebody that was already on staff when I took over as AD. And so he was letting us know he was stepping down and moving on his way. And we put it out there. And we had several applicants, and several pretty good applicants went through the interview process. And it was a very different interview. I mean, we had a first round, second round type interview situation. And I don't remember all the details. It's been a few years, but we didn't have any internal applicants, and that was kind of interesting because we had a lot of people who were really involved with the school. And then once it got to the end of it, Coach Weatherby actually put his name in the hat, and we were really excited about that. Having somebody on campus there's something to be said about having an on-campus coach or somebody that's really involved with the kids, not just as the coaching aspect and showing up at practice time and game time and such. But having a real pulse about what's going on campus. And when he joined in the fight for the position, it was awesome. And it was a great hire for us, and he did an excellent job. Until he stepped down, obviously retired, but he's still around. He's not, he had a hard time really fully stepping away.
Right.
He
loves the game so much.
You football coaches just as well as anybody. And a coach is a coach. It doesn't matter if they step away. It's still inside them.
Right.
They bleed it. They love it.
Right.
And they got a passion for it. And
I think he's still on the huddle watching film. And
I don't doubt it. I don't know what he'd do without it. I mean, it's that inner drive, that inner burn that you got. And I think that goes for a lot of coaches. And I think football a little bit more so than most, but the good ones anyway, and the ones that you really want in programs and leading kids.
Sure. And I think you made a fantastic choice. Jason Weatherby did a decade of a great job. I myself personally learned a lot from him, being on his staff. So of course I'm a little biased from that standpoint. So he did a wonderful job. You make me think of a story though, when you talk about the importance of having an on-campus coach. Back when I played, way back a long time ago, when helmets weren't as nice as they are now.
Right. Weren't they leather then? No face mask.
So back then off-campus coaches were maybe just getting started. There's one or two of them, but for the most part, all the coaches were teachers, and so you always had a coach that was on campus. And I remember one particular occasion, the power had went out in the school, right?
Yes.
And so like all the kids are kind of like out in the common area, and we had like this like amphitheater area with the grass. All the kids are out there and they're just kind of roaming around. And rumor got out that the California state law was if power goes out and you can't get it restored within 45 minutes, you're supposed to send the kids home. Now, whether this was true or not, who knows? It was like, what? Who said this? But it didn't matter because now it was law. Like the kids absolutely believed it.
Yeah.
And so now they're angry because they haven't been sent home. And all the teachers coming out saying, hey, we're going to send you back to your class now, even though the power has not been restored. Everybody refused to go back to class. Uh-oh. So now it became a full-on protest.
Sure, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So like everyone's like, oh, we're not going back. How come? So it's getting around. And then nobody would go back to class. The administration, the principals came out and said with their cameras, if we take your picture, you will be suspended and you'll be held accountable. They were trying all these things to get people to just go back to class.
Yeah.
Kids are posing for the picture. They're, having a good old time with it. They didn't care. All of a sudden, the head football coach, Coach Swift, comes out. And I remembered this just vice grip on my arm, grabbing a hold of me. And I turn around and I look, and it's Coach Swift. He goes, get your ass back to class now. I'm like, yes, sir. Ran. All the football players instantly went, oh, man.
Yeah.
They went back to class.
Yeah.
Right after that, everybody dispersed.
Yeah.
Everybody went back to class.
Yeah.
And it was like, having the football coach. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a huge thing having on-campus coaches. It's tough to find sometimes, and not just with Coach Weatherby, not just an on-campus coach, but an alumni.
Right.
Alumni.
How do you get better than that?
Right. And somebody who had a quality time going through the program when he did, and now he's living it on the other end as the coach and doing a great job. And he did a great job in his tenure in coaching for us.
Yeah, you bet. So Coach, our topic today is we wanted to get into a little bit about the scholastic part of interscholastic athletics.
Mm-hmm.
I thought no better person than you. You've been around this for so many years and so long, and probably have lots of stories and examples of some of the things we're going to talk about today. Yeah. But let's first explain to the folks, what are you talking about, scholastic athletics, and let's explain to them what we mean.
Well, when he first sent me the outline of what was going on, I'm thinking, why didn't Coach Anderson get this gig? I'm sure he has he's got a lot of great insight on scholastic stuff. Interscholastic athletics, I mean, that's the I in CIF. And interscholastic athletics, you break the words down, it's pretty simple. Inter meaning between, scholastic meaning scholarly education type situation, and athletics. So you're talking about playing sports with a school-based and education-based programs and between schools.
Sure.
And so that's kind of what it breaks down to. And it's one of those things the cliche of coaches talking about the term student athlete. That's what interscholastic is all about, and interscholastic athletics is all about. So, the student athlete is what we talk about often with kids. You're the student first, you're an athlete second. Some kids forget that at times, and they need the healthy reminders. But So
with that being said, let's talk about there's expectations and minimum requirements for athletes to play in sports in school. What are they?
Well, at Calaveras, I mean, I could talk about Calaveras, and I could talk about some other schools over the years, working with administration and athletic directors. And I was involved in CIF for a long period of time and the board of managers there. But our minimum requirement is 2.0. You have your grade point average that you have to maintain, or you're on academic probation, which disqualifies you from being on the travel roster, on the playing roster, and suiting up for games. Less than 2 Fs. So one F in a class would be okay. Obviously, that's not what we want for kids, because we're talking about being a student first, and passing classes to be able to graduate from high school and move on to the next level if possible. And then obviously you got to be in good standing. Most recently, Calaveras has adopted a social probation as well for other things, attendance rates, and also other issues that might come up that aren't related to just grades, and making sure these kids are well-rounded as far as their behavior and such, so that they have the opportunity to play. I've always said it, and I will say it probably hopefully till the day I die, that interscholastic athletics, or Calaveras athletics in general, is a privilege. It's not a right, in my opinion. And I think we've lost that a little bit at times. But I really believe that. And I think kids deserve the opportunity to do so, and have the opportunities to play sports, because it builds, and we can go on and on.
You learn so much more. Yeah.
You've seen it over the years, and there's nothing better than those kids that come back and say, "Hey, coach, how you doing?" And they're in the military, or they got their own business, or they're building a family, and it's just, that's what it's all about more than anything else. And in order to do so, you got to be a student athlete, not just an athlete.
Absolutely. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is the other side of that coin. Conversely, there's been a big, huge numbers influx of what they'd call club sports, or travel teams, or in basketball, I think they have AAU. And so you have these kind of other organizations that are not affiliated with any type of school. And, tell us a little bit about what goes on in that work. Because, I mean, for me, it's like, okay, it's a little bit different than it is for interscholastic athletics.
Yeah. So club sport, you got to be careful when you use the word club, because typically club sports could be related to the school as well.
Okay.
Sometimes when they started esports, electronic sports, stunt, or when they first start off with a program, or a sport in high school or even college. Often the college has club sports that aren't the interscholastic where they're going and playing other schools. So sometimes club isn't the right word necessarily. Travel sports, I think, is what you really hit on.
Okay.
That's a good one. I think that's more of a sport. You have different levels of things. You got, like you said, the AAU programs in basketball mostly. I mean, they have a lot of AAU programs that aren't just basketball. But anyway, talking about travel sports, I was involved in travel sports for many years with my own kids and other kids. I think travel sports is a great thing for kids to be challenged and pushed next level type of stuff. But I think we've also lost some things with regards to, there's been kids that choose to play travel only and not their high school. And there's something to be said about wearing your high school jersey, being a part of a high school team. And being a part of the community and representing the community that you are. When it comes to travel sports, there's a lot more individualism in there. They're paying their money. They're looking out for the next thing. They're looking out for, am I paying my money now to try to get a scholarship for later? And that's how I get through college or what have you. But I think there's a place for travel sports. Obviously there's rec sports as well, which is kind of a lower level than travel sports, because most times travel, you're playing a lot better competition. You see the better quality athletes involved in travel sports more so than just the local rec stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a place for it. It's just a matter of how do we govern it the correct way.
Right.
And I know that's probably something we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about the requirements for a student athlete. What are the requirements for a travel athlete?
If you can pull out your pocketbook and your checkbook and make the payments. And I will say that there's probably some programs that do a good job, or at least try to do a good job with regards to them being a student first. I don't necessarily think it'd be a student first. I think it might be 1A, 1B type of thing. They're not going to keep you around if you're not good enough to play on their team in a travel situation, and you got to pay your money in order to do so. And I've seen it plenty of times. But the other thing too is when schools are recruiting or through the travel programs, they're taking a look at the GPAs, and there's ways of getting extra money at the next level because of your GPA, because of your, stuff you're doing in the classroom, just as much as you got to have the talent to play at that next level, on the field or, on the court.
Right. I guess for me personally, in my own opinion, my concern is, a lot of these travel teams kind of take on this persona of you got to be elite at the sport and perform, on the field or court or whatever your sport is, be a performer. When it's time to go, you go.
Yes.
Your check clears. And then other than that, we're not interested at all in what kind of, education you're receiving or what kind of message that you're getting. Just take care of this business, and we don't really care what's going on with the rest.
I would say I agree 100% with you, but like I said, there are some programs that take into account the other stuff. But for the most part, that's what a lot of times travel is. And unfortunately, in my opinion, I think in girls more than boys, I think the travel has exceeded the high school as far as where they can move on from. They're getting recruited more so out of the travel stuff. And that's unfortunate because that's exactly what happens. It's like a factory, they want to get you in, you pay your money and get you out. There's some really good programs that do a little bit of both, like I said, but in the boys, I don't see that as much, especially football. Cause there's not a tackle football program outside of football season.
Right.
You get your AAU for basketball and boys and girls. So
other sports see it more.
Exactly. But I think more so in girls, because, let's talk about this. If I'm a college coach and I want to go see Gil Valtierra out on the football field, I got to go on a Friday night and, unless he's playing passing league, but let's be honest, coach, I don't know if you were what position you used to play. Right. But, there's not a whole lot of linemen out on the passing league field. So, I got to see you on a Friday night. Well, let's talk about a softball player, because I got a lot more experience in that. And a softball player, am I going to go on a Tuesday night and see Calaveras versus Bret Hart and see one girl, between two teams? Where if I'm on a travel situation, I got a girl that I want to see on this team. Let's just call it Bat Busters. Well, she's at a huge tournament, and there's probably 20, 30, 40 teams, some of the big ones. There's been more than that. And maybe I run into 2 or 3 or 4 girls. I'm like, wow,
sure,
look at her too.
Sure.
I saw the one I wanted to see, but there's 2 or 3 on her own team that may help me out.
It's like I'm going to go fishing. I want to go fish in the hot spot where there's there's a lot of bites in that pond. And
for the non-fisherman that I'd want to go to the trout farm, knowing I'm going to catch one, versus going out to the lake and hoping to God that I run into a trout or something like that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think that's the issue that we have in high school sports often. We're fighting that against travel ball. I think there's a place for both.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, though, you bring up the recruiting aspect from it, because I always felt, again, back when I played, there was no internet.
Yes.
There was no technology, right?
Yeah.
So to me, then that would make perfect sense. I'm an athlete. I want to be seen in front of as many, coaches as possible. But nowadays, there's the internet, there's Huddle. I mean, you look at Michael Orr, the Blind Side movie, and the Baltimore Ravens, and he's a small little Christian school out in the middle of nowhere. He wasn't at a big school.
True.
And he ends up going to a big school and ends up in the NFL. So to me, it's hard to really reconcile. Is it really more recruiting that way with all the technology that's still available for even the guy that just goes to his small little school?
That's a great point. I mean, I think it's some of both. I mean, obviously, I think those coaches use the tools of the internet and Huddle and the technology based stuff. But there's something to be said about laying your eyes on somebody, and you want to see how they react in between innings in a ball game. You want to see how they react when they fail, because a lot of times those things are highlights.
Little body language.
They're not the lowlights.
Right.
I want to see what kind of teammate you are. Are you going to be the guy sulking on the bench after you just walked a couple guys, or I popped up in a crucial at bat? What am I doing? Am I going to take that out to the field on defensively?
Right.
Am I going to miss a jumper on one end of the court and run back on defense and kind of give a half-ass effort because I'm pissed off that I missed my last shot?
That's a good point.
So I think you miss those things. That's why those highlights are so great, or the Sports Center moments are fantastic. But
they're just going to show you what they want to show you.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But let's talk about as a Scholastic or Interscholastic football coach. My entire career, I coached 24 years. It's always been as part of the high school. Man, the training and the certifications and all of the stuff that I had to go through. And it wasn't just initially to get hired. It was continuing on, right? Every couple of years, we got to renew and all this stuff.
Yep.
Do any of these travel coaches have to go through any of that?
Well, I can tell you from experience, because I was a travel coach as well with my younger one. And I never had to do any certifications in order. Do you want to coach, or I'm asking you to help me coach? I mean, obviously I had the knowledge to coach. It was just a matter of, do I have the time? Do I want to? I don't know that any do. I'll be honest. I think the only one that I ever had to do anything, and we talked about how many things I've coached and levels I've coached. The only thing I ever had to do, which was a rec ball or travel ball situation, was certification for football, to be a football coach, when we talked about, learning how to do all the tackling, the football, the USA football certification course. Yep. That was the only time I had to do something that related to rec. Yeah, you've probably done it a few times, rec or travel ball stuff. So no, they don't. I'm guessing that they don't have a whole lot of certifications on safety, let alone bloodborne pathogens.
So it's almost like the athlete. It's performance based. He's a hell of a coach.
Yeah,
he wins.
Yep.
This guy's got an incredible record.
Yeah, but do they win because they're a great coach, or do they win because they have the better talent?
Right.
I think question. You never know. I mean, there are some really, really good travel ball coaches that have really good reputations, and I just wonder, it's putting the great talent together is just as much about coaching as it is about teaching the ones that are a little less talented,
right,
to get better. So
it's almost like, I think, knowing like all this training I had to go through, the scrutiny you go through, and then a travel coach doesn't have to do that. He could almost get away with a lot, right? He could be like a Bobby Knight and throwing chairs out onto the court, and people are like, they excuse it because, wow, but he hasn't lost a game in 3 years. Leave him be.
You're 100% correct on that. You just never know what's going to happen there. There's not a whole lot of checks and balances in travel ball. I know they have things set up in place in travel ball organizations, and whether it be basketball, softball, I don't know them all, but I definitely don't think there's as many checks and balances as do they. God only knows if they do a background check on some of the travel ball coaches. I mean, I have no idea.
It brings me to my next question, which is you mentioned the CIF and the I being Interscholastic. The CIF governs the rules associated with all high school sports in California. Who does this for travel teams or club or AAU? Who does this for all of that?
That's a great question. I don't know that there is anybody, to be honest with you. I mean, I would think it'd fall under somebody that's the head of each program. I don't know.
So each program is like, dad's a plumber and his kid's a basketball player, and they start a board, and now he's president of the board. So now he's in charge, right?
Correct. I mean, I don't know that there's any other thing out there that is like this where, I think even rec ball, there's more checks and balances. At least
it's a wild west.
I think that's where a lot of people struggle with travel is, and why a lot of arguments happen and a lot of issues happen. I would guess that a lot of the things that you see on social media or whatever, bad things happening from parent to coach or parent to referee or kids or, all the burnout and all this. I think a lot of that stems from more travel than it does high school. But don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who are involved in high school ball that need to be reined back in at times.
Sure.
Too. Or probably any level. There's got to be checks and balances, but there are definitely less checks and balances when it comes to travel ball because who do you answer to?
The high school coach knows that he's being watched and his actions are under scrutiny. And if he throws that chair out onto the court, he's probably sitting in front of some administrators that next week.
I've had to do that a few times. I had a great story, a great football story, actually.
I love it.
One year we were in the playoffs, and this was Coach Canepa got ejected from a game, and rightly so. But I mean, it wasn't over the top. It wasn't something that but I remember getting to do the walk with him from the sideline all the way up to the to our wrestling room where you can actually still see the game, but you just can't be involved in the game.
Right.
There are some choice words being had by him to me with regards to what happened, and being a coach myself and being a friend of Roger too. It was just fun to. It was an interesting walk, one of my more interesting walks when I was in charge of sports at Calaveras. But I did have to say, hey, that's the rules that CIF throws down. That's the rules that we have to administer here at the high school level. I mean, he knows it too, and those checks and balances. What happens if a coach gets kicked out of something in travel ball? Who walks him out the door? Nobody. I don't even know. What? I don't even know. I've never really seen it happen where somebody takes him off the field. He has to be removed from the field, but he's probably right back the very next game. There's checks and balances for high school sports. You get booted, you're out for another one too.
Right. There's some consequences.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's last season I got to interview Jason Furlback, who's in one of the board he's in charge of football for the CIF,
assistant section commissioner. Yeah,
yeah. So nice guy.
Yes, and
he really opened up my eyes to like the inner operations of the CIF, because I always had this vision, and probably most people do. Of the CIF being like the government, right? And they're like coming down on you with the rules and laws and, obey or else.
Yes.
And really what he explained was they're a federation. So all they're doing is enforcing the rules that the schools actually have put in place.
Yes.
The schools have voted and said, these are what we think the rules should be. They all agreed on it. And the CIF is just doing what they've been asked to do.
Yeah. I had the pleasure. It was a lot. I love sports and I love all aspects of it. But I had a privilege of representing our league, Motherland League, for 10 years or so during my time of athletic director, where I was our representative to the board of managers. Mm-hmm. You have an athletic director or administrator that go and sit in and like you said, it is a federation. It is governed by the leagues, by the schools. And all they do is they're there to help with that. Obviously, they have to have a set of guidelines that we have to follow. But for the most part, if you look through a lot of the rules and regs when it comes to the CIF or our section, the Sac Joaquin section, most of them defer to the school rules. And, that's where it comes down. Obviously, they have transfer rules and such, but those are dealing between schools.
Right.
But when it comes to what's happening on your campus and what's happening there, those are the rules that govern high school and high school sports for the most part.
Yeah. So along with that, in your experience, being on the board of managers, how has the CIF tried to mitigate the differences with athletes that are playing both school and travel ball? What have they done, recognizing there's a dynamic there that they have to address?
Well, once again, these are the situations where the CIF makes the rules. You're not allowed to play the same sport, same season. CIF, that's a CIF rule. If you break those rules, you're a violation of that rule. I don't remember which bylaw it is right offhand, number wise. But there's consequences of that, whether it be a sit out period, whether it be forfeitures of games or what have you. But there's definite policy in place.
So basketball, like a club or a travel basketball team, and then immediately play for your high school basketball.
Same season, same sport cannot happen. There was some gray area when it comes to that. Because some of the seasons for high school overlapped some seasons for the travel ball stuff. So they want kids to be able to play and be seen for a next level type situation. But I'll give you a perfect example in softball. During softball season, high school softball season, the older levels, the 16s and 18s of travel ball shut down. There's no tournaments. There's nothing. Up to the high school age level, they're still going on during high school softball season, but the high school softball players are not playing because you cannot do both. It's illegal CIF wise.
Gotcha. Do you know? I mean, you may not, not being in the CIF now, but have you heard of anything that where there's been rebellion where they're telling kids, "Well, let's play anyways"? And,
no.
Okay.
I mean, over the years, during COVID time, we had the situation of people playing football when, and they had to, there were some sanctions against some schools.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Issues and breaking of the rules, whether it be on purpose or by accident, happen every year, all the time. You can actually go on the CIF website and look at the infractions by schools.
I've seen it. I've done that.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100 plus every year, every single year. And like I said, some of it is, oversight by adults, us, people in administration of the schools and the kids. And sometimes it's kids being sneaky and shady or coaches being sneaky and shady. But yes, it happens all the time. Not condoning it, not saying it's okay, but it definitely happens, and oversight does happen. And in those situations, you either have to self-report, you get reported by, you have to answer to somebody, and then the sanctions or consequences come down, and you abide by those. I would be willing to bet, I know Calaveras has had at least one this year. We've had several over the years, some bigger profile, some not as big. But in our league, it happens pretty much every school, every year.
Yeah.
And, some years it was worse, some years it was better, some years it didn't happen at all, but for the most part, it happens. It's unfortunate. And that's why the rules are in place. And then when the consequences come down or sanctions come down, you deal with them and you kind of go from there, and you try to adjust administratively what you're doing to make sure. The goal is always, in my time, and I can't speak now for what's going on athletic wise totally, but my goal was to limit the impact on kids.
Sure.
And not affect the outcome of, unfortunately it happens and you deal with it, but that was always my goal when it came to kids.
Yeah. I did a pretty good thorough sweeping of the CIF website right before we did the podcast with Jason. And I found that of all of the infractions, at least for, not this past season, it was going to be the season before that, the majority of them, well over 50% of them were in football.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, why so much? I mean, does football just cheat more? I mean, but really it was just, I guess, it's a more high profile sport.
Sure.
Everybody, it's kind of under the microscope, everybody under a lot of scrutiny. But he did say a lot of it was just missed paperwork. People not turning in paperwork on players that they should have did, and
it just depends on how it all works out. Sometimes it's administrative oversight on kids coming in that you don't realize, and not having the correct protocols on how you bring in kids into school. During the COVID time, it was crazy because kids are wanting to go here, there, and everywhere to make sure they have the opportunity to play. I mean, I know of a high profile football player from Southern California, right around the corner. He went to Narbonne High School, right around the corner from where I grew up. He went over to Texas or Georgia or somewhere where they were still playing football during COVID time.
Oh, wow.
He was a USC recruit, and kids transferring all over the place during that time. So anyway, things like that happen. It's really unfortunate. And the goal is always, the paperwork thing. Yes, that's an issue. But that's why we always go back to, you try to limit the impact that it has on the kids, and it's not their fault.
Yeah. You'd hate to see, a guy in his senior year miss a game because of paperwork,
Yes. I would say that but has it happened?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And has it been an oversight as an administrator, an ex-administrator of athletics? Absolutely. I made mistakes in those same capacities too. And I think everybody would say that's done the job. It's unfortunate. We don't want it to happen. That's never our goal.
Right.
But if it ever does, you deal with the consequences of sanctions. And like I said, the goal is always to make sure that it doesn't impact the kids. Unfortunately, it has to at times, and it's just unfortunate situations. One
of the things, and last one on this topic, we'll move on. But one of the things I talked to Jason about, and it made sense, but I felt like when you self-report, and it was, something minor, and you self-report and say, hey, we screwed up. But you look at it in the situation, for example, I'll use Calaveras.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly we're up 44-3. The game's at hand. We let some kid get in a game in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left to give the kid a chance. And the next thing you know, that was an infraction. We self-report, and now we're done out of the playoffs for the rest of the year.
Yep.
And we're done, right? Yeah. So my thing was, looking at the extenuating circumstances, does the punishment fit the crime? And especially when it was self-reported, we didn't, and have you looked at that? And really, he agreed and said, no, the punishment didn't fit the crime. But he says, there's like 7 people that work in the CIF office in the Sac-Joaquin section. There's 200 high schools?
Just under, yeah.
Yeah, almost 200 high schools.
Yep.
It's impossible from a manpower perspective, for them to be able to say, let's look at every single case that comes across our desk and evaluate the extenuating circumstances, and then come up if we want different rules or different punishments and what fits. They just don't have the manpower or time to do it. Yeah. So unfortunately, right now, you get full pop.
Yeah. Well, I know exactly what we're talking about in our situation, and I mean, I was involved in that. Obviously, I was the athletic director at the time, and I was the one who had to self-report it and for our school. And that's one of was my biggest argument to them. And is it honestly fitting the crime that happened?
Yeah.
And, there was no intent of being malicious. There was no intent of cheating. There was no intent of trying to recruit.
Bring in a ringer.
But here's the thing that, I disagreed with it, and I still will. But think about it as a coach on the coach's end. Whenever you coach, lots of coaches, especially the really good ones, they're always looking for that gray area. And when you allow gray area, people start stretching the black and white. And that's where I think the CIF sits a lot of times, is if I start creating gray areas, well, you didn't mean to.
Right.
Well, who's going to be the judge of that?
Right.
I didn't mean to do it. Extenuating circumstances, does it fit the crime? Well, if A happened, then the B is now the result or consequence.
Right.
And that's kind of where they sit. And like you said, they don't have the manpower to figure out how gray the gray area was. Right. It's either this happened and that is the result.
Let's investigate everything that comes across.
It's hard to do. It's unfortunate, yes, but I understand where they're coming from too.
Sure. So in your opinion, has the disparity between Scholastic athletics and these travel teams, has it gotten better or worse over the last couple of decades?
When I saw this question, I really thought about it. I think I don't think I mean the travel stuff and versus interscholastic they're different. So the dynamic of playing in a high school team and a high school program, high school sports is the playing for your community, playing for your school, the pride of that. So I think that's still there, and I think that's not the issue. I don't think travel sports are the issue. To me, I think the bigger issue is the private versus public. Those are the bigger issues that I have right now with interscholastic sports. So I don't have a problem with.
So tell me a little bit about that.
This is probably a whole nother podcast. I'm a believer. I think all playing fields should be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a school that has no residential boundaries and can pull kids from here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, open
enrollment, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's public schools that have open enrollment too. So it's kind of a hard argument to have, but I'm a believer that if they have the ability to go wherever they want to go, then they should play with other like schools that have the same rules.
So open enrollment schools should be in a league together.
They do it in some areas in the state of California. I don't have a problem with it. If that's what they want, that's fine. And does that mean like the rich are getting richer all the time? Maybe, but there's something to be said to play for your own community school. But I hate it when it drives me nuts over the years to watch a public school have a really quality team or teams, and they go in and they play these private schools and they get pounded because, it's almost like playing a high school versus a travel situation, and where you get to pick and choose versus I get what I get. And
right. Coach them up, deal with it.
Coach them up and deal. So I think I have a problem more with the public versus private. Go ahead. You can have your private schools. That's all well and good. Put them in one division, put them in one league.
Sure.
I know the travel, but I'm sorry. You chose to be there. You have to deal with the impacts and the consequences of that. That's my thought.
What's interesting to me is, okay, you'll have this little private school, open enrollment. They only got 150 kids on their campus, but all of them are 6 foot, 185, incredible athletic ability. Not one single person does not play sports.
Yeah, and
right? Every single one of them are athletes.
Yep.
And I almost think like maybe some of these travel organizations, are they getting so big that it doesn't take much to all of a sudden create your own charter school?
Could be. I'd be remiss to say that's probably already out there because I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it is. But the CIF does have rules and regulations in place that programs cannot just be a basketball school or this. You have to have a certain amount of programs in order to be considered to be a CIF Sac Joaquin section member.
Gotcha.
So there are.
You offer up so many sports.
Exactly. Yeah. And just to come in and be a
football, basketball only,
a powerhouse of one or two things is not what CIF is all about. They're, and they do a good job with that too. And sitting in on the board of managers for as many years as I did, we've had those, associate members and working to become full-fledged members of CIF that may not have fit the criteria that CIF has in their umpteen bylaws.
There's plenty of them.
Yes, there are.
.24 section this and that.
Yes, exactly.
So you might have already answered this with the private public thing, but maybe you have more to add to it.
Okay.
Is there anything that could be done that you don't see is being done now that can help the dynamic between the two different things with the school and the travel?
You know what? I think it's more the conversation that I wish wasn't as bad. I've heard a lot of conversation that they kind of the travel ball coaches poo-poo the high school ball coaches, or the travel ball teams, say negative or condescending stuff about the high. It's the same kids. You might be on a all-star team or a travel type team. There's nothing wrong. They get a great experience. They can get a great experience at both places. My goal as a coach, your goal as a coach, is to coach the kids up so they're good quality people. They have the opportunity, if they choose to, move on and play at the next level. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. As long as one doesn't trump the other, what does it really matter?
Right.
And I think sometimes we forget that, and we think I'm a travel ball player, I'm big and bad, and you're just a lowly rec ball player, or you only play high school. What do you know? But I don't know. I wish that we just support it all and give the kids the opportunities to move on. And I will always say there's something to be said to wear Calaveras across your chest. Whether you have your name on the back doesn't even matter to me. Representing the community, the people that are around, your family, the school, the pride of the colors that you wear.
Yeah, you
there's some. I know you're that guy too. And I know football guys are typically more so than most, but I love that stuff. And that's what high school sports is all about. And I'm not saying travel isn't good too. It's just it's a different level. It's a different opportunity.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I agree. There's something about that allegiance to your school, your classmates. Mm-hmm. That guy sits next to me in math and we're all out there at the game. And right. I mean, there's just something about that.
Absolutely.
And, to me, I would say as far as the disparity and the differences, I'm more about kids being multi-sport athletes. I start to take issue with club or travel or AAU when they just only want to play that one sport, right? So they're going to play for the school, their one sport, but then now they're not going to play anything else because they're going to go play travel in that one sport, basketball at AAU, and then do all that and become a one sport athlete. And to me, I'm like, play them all, man. Play them all. You're young. You should play everything you can now. When you get to college, when you get to the higher levels, that's when you're probably only going to get to play one sport. So now that you have a chance to play lots of different ones, take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think a lot of that time when they start singular sport athletes, you're talking about burnout. You're talking about disinterest. I mean, you got to really love it in order to do it at that. How many of the best linemen have you ever seen are great wrestlers?
True.
How many of the really good athletes play multiple sport? I mean, I think a lot of college coaches will tell you that there's something to be said about the athlete that can do multiple things, because that's a true athlete.
Yeah.
That's not just a basketball player. That's an athlete.
Yeah. And then there's the science with repetitive motion injury, always using just the same muscle.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that cross training idea gets you to be strong in different things and be able to let your body do. I would bet that there's a lot more studies out there that talk about the breakdown of the body, being a pitcher and, just pitching all the time. I mean, there's a million studies out there about baseball and pitching and ruining arms and coaches and travel ball
when they're too young
and throwing curveballs too early. I mean, we can go on and on about that, but I agree with you 100%. Be an athlete. Don't just be a sport player. Be an athlete.
Yeah. Do it all.
Absolutely.
Do it all.
I've said this to kids for 20 years, and you only get to do it for so long. Take advantage of it. Do as much as you can for as long as you can, because there's one time where you're going to sit here and you're going to be talking about it on a podcast instead of actually getting to do it because your body doesn't want you to.
That's right. Yeah. Either you're going to say, I don't want to do it anymore, or someone else is going to tell you, no, you're not going to do this anymore.
That's true. Yes. Yes, definitely.
Well, Coach, we're about out of our time here, so just kind of run through what we talked about. We talked about the interscholastic sports, the travel team, some of the differences, some of the pros and cons of all of that. Ultimately, it's like, hey, as long as you're out there and you're performing and you're playing, it's a good thing. But once again, it's a whole lot different thing when it's for your school, for your community. There's something special about that, and I think we both agree with that.
100%, 100%. Represent your school, represent the people that you grew up with or grew up around, your community. It's something to be. My goal when in football season, when I was in charge of everything, I make it an event, not just a football game. And bring the ice cream truck out and bring the taco truck out and let the little kids run around and. They think you're the greatest person in the whole world if you're wearing that high school football jersey, and you get moms and dads and relative that it's a great interscholastic athletics is a great thing. I hope that travel ball and all these other things don't ruin that. I don't think they will, but I just you worry about that all the time when all these other things pop up. But yeah, I can go on. You and I, you could talk football probably all day long. I could talk athletics all day long. It's just our passions.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come out and talk with the Calaveras faithful and to talk with us. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate what you're doing here. This is a great thing, and it's bringing sports, not just football, to anybody and everybody who wants to hear about it. That's tremendous.
You bet. Thank you. So I want to thank you all out there for listening. Thanks to Coach Mike Koepp for taking the time to come out to the studio and spend some time with us. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Let's Talk Football with Coach Val. Be sure to share the page with all your followers and friends. Remember that we will have 2 new episodes drop every month from now until August when the high school football season begins. And then we will be on every Friday coinciding with that Friday night football game during the fall. Until next time, we are out. Right about inside the 4-yard line. They're giving them maybe about a half-yard gain. Coming on 1 minute left. Curran under center. One back behind him, that's Spur. He puts Ayala in motion. He hands off to Ayala, who cuts up the middle, gets low. Touchdown, Calaveras!
And another flag.
And in shotgun, slot receivers. He's looking to throw. Gets some trouble, rolls off to his left. He throws, and it's intercepted. That's number 32, Caden Spur. Touchdown, Calaveras! Calaveras has the ball. They're moving from our left to right. Curran under center, single back behind him. Puts a man in motion. That's Ayala. He gives it to Ayala, who cuts up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. The 40. The 20. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Ethan Ayala.